Hello, my fellow Americans. It's your favorite or least favorite now, I really don't know anymore, President Donald J. Trump. And today we have some bad news. The truth is, you're not that good. You're not that good. We don't want you anymore, and we don't need you anymore. And so with that, we are announcing the new starting lineup for MAGA and Team America. Starting at center with Pajit Hindu Patel, well known for his offense, Iv Oders, very hard to defend. The power forward will be Hong Lung Ming Ching Ping Wong. He is necessary for us to succeed. Our small forward will be Khalif Mohammed Abdul. Abdul, of course, well known for his time as a killer while with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, but he's with us now. Shooting guard will be our token black. Everybody's got one now. Everybody's got to have their token black. So ours will be Dequarius Jackson Livingston III. And with a name like that, you can't go wrong. And of course, starting at point guard, he will be getting all the minutes, he will be getting the most shots, and have all the plays drawn up specifically for him. Joey Rosenstein. Joey is a 5-time league MVP after his parents bought cars for the entire league commissioners board. Congratulations, Joey. Your parents really love you. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Your new team MAGA, your new team America. You Americans just not good enough anymore. We don't want you. So this is who we're bringing in. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Trump's a bitch.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know. We don't like him. That's the word around here.
Any particular reason why you don't like him?
No clue at all. I'm just going with everybody else.
That is just ridiculous.
No clue at all. I'm just going with the crowd. I'll tell you one thing that might shock people out there listening to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Welcome everybody Sunday afternoon. Joe, I have my wife's mother here, so I get to enjoy a little wine today and some Haitian beef patties. You don't really get much better than that, okay? I know that might sound some sacrilegious to some Italian Americans out there. My mother-in-law's beef patties are the bomb. Have that with a glass of wine, and as my mother would say, your brains will fall out. Anyway, having said all that, all right, you see that first clip with the new lineup in MAGA, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight at the front line. You don't want to go anywhere tonight. You want to sit down for about an hour. You want to pour a glass of wine, all right? If you got a couple of beef patties, go put them in the microwave or in the oven and sit down and listen to Joe and Joe. We're going to be talking about 50 years. First of all, we're going to talk about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is losing. He's this close to losing me. Joe Rossinello might be a little further away, but he's not making Joe Rossinello happy, all right? Who's a very hard guy to piss off. Very difficult to piss off Joe Rossinello. But so if you are doing that, you're really doing something wrong. Me, it's easy. You can just say, well, that's Joe Pasillo. He's just a hothead anyway. But we're going to be talking about a lot of things that Trump is either proposing or doing or whatever the case might be. You got 50-year mortgages. We got to get into that. Okay, we haven't spoken about that really. That's a joke. That's a scam. I mean, so much of what goes on is a scam. That's why Joe and I started doing this show 6-7 years ago, because so much of what's going on is just a scam. 50-year mortgages, that's a scam. We're going to break that down for you. HB1 visas, Joe and I might have a little disagreement on this. Not much, of course, because we are Joe and Joe. But we got to talk about that. Donald Trump is really talking down to his base. He's looking down on us. He's talking down on us. And he's making a lot of people very, very upset. Bannon has chimed in on Trump. And Bannon, is a supporter of Donald Trump when Donald Trump is supporting the right agenda. And Bannon's going to have something to say about that. We got Nick Fuentes commenting on something Joe and I have spoken about many times, reminding people that America First and MAGA, if you want to call it that, transcends Donald Trump. He needs to pass the mantle. Nick Fuentes made that point. We got a clip for you from that. And Ben Shapiro basically says, if you can't live in New York, move. We're going to break that down. And Tim Dillon's talking about a future where you're completely controlled. Again, I think they're all watching the front line with Joe and Joe, because Joe and I have been saying this for a very, very, very long time. All right. But yeah, the future is controlled. So, Joe, what are your thoughts on this Sunday afternoon?
Well, I think a lot of people are a little disgusted, and Donald Trump, to a degree, is taking them for granted. He just lost Virginia, New Jersey, and what was the other vote that took place? There was the third.
New York City.
New York City. New York's big.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, and it's an indicator. It's obviously the government shutdown, for those who weren't paying attention. That was for those elections. It was a distraction to the violence that was going on in the cities to get the voter, their mind away from that and onto something else. And by the way, that is how much our government leaders care about people. They talked about SNAP benefits. They talked about all this stuff that was orchestrated. That was a tactic to get your mind off of what was about to happen. And it worked. Notice the second the election was done, the government shutdown ended. The longest government shutdown in the history of the country. It was also red meat to throw to the Democratic base as if they had something to say. They got nothing out of that. Zero.
Right.
From beginning to end, it was a tactic. Were you paying attention to it? Sadly, most people got distracted. As it was intended, they did not see through the fog. That's why they did it. It shows how much they care about you. Particularly their base, who actually were hurt by it, who rely on food stamps. That's who they attacked. They did it because you're nothing more than a tool.
Well, you want to know the truth of the matter, and this is why I'm glad we're having this conversation. Joe, there's already people in the chat room that are attacking us. Why? Because we're attacking Donald Trump. You see what I mean? Like, the Democrat Party does things that they don't give a crap about their base, and then they tell them, "Oh, just shut your mouth. We know what to do. We're the smart people." And then you get Trump does the same thing. I'm sorry. I'm not going to sit here. I'm not the biggest fan of MTG, but I like her.
No, I like her too. To be honest,
all right, I like her. I like her feistiness. We need people like her on the right to offset the Ilhan Omars and the AOCs on the left. Why is Donald Trump attacking her? Why is Donald Trump attacking Thomas Massey? Why is Donald Trump attacking Rand Paul?
Well, I can tell you why.
Because
those two are against Israeli lobbies. And to be honest with you, and this is not picking on the Israeli lobby. I'm picking on the NRA lobby, the NEA lobby, the Teamsters lobby, all of them. Lobbying is pay for play politics. It has to end. But that's why he's attacking them, because he gets money from the Israeli lobby. And it's bringing it to light, and it's hurting him. And he knows where his butter is his bread is buttered. And this is the baseline problem with American politics, why it doesn't work. Because it's pay to play. And Donald Trump is as much a part of that as anyone else was. Remember when he ran, I'm going to fund my own campaign. And he did. But no longer. He is in bed with power brokers in America.
Well, the power shift in America, and there's been a few things I watched this week. I'm sure you have too. Joe Rossinello, Joe Pasillo at the front line with Joe and Joe. Welcome, everybody. Few things I watched this week. The sand is shifting under Donald Trump's feet. Okay? And he better recognize that and understand that he's not able to withstand that. He's pissing off a lot of people. Okay? Now, we're going to get into a lot of that today. All right? And we're going to try to cram it all into an hour. However, MTG is one of them. The stuff he's saying about her and everybody else, because they don't like, what he's doing. Like you said, I thought he was somewhat independent. Let's open, what is it, Joe, that game show? Let's go behind door number one. So let's talk about the first thing that Trump is actually proposing. That is a freaking scam of all scam beyond all. We're Italian. We knew gangsters growing up that couldn't come up with a scam like this.
We are Americans. We are not slaves. We are not slaves to the plantation owner. We are not slaves to China. And we are not slaves to Wall Street. This 50-year mortgage idea is a spit in the face. It is an insult. We did not vote for this. We did not vote to become debt slaves to private equity firms and the big banks in Wall Street. Right now, the median home in America costs $500,000. At the prevailing mortgage rate of 6%, you would have $580,000 of interest payments over 30 years. If we went with this ridiculous, inane idea of a 50-year mortgage, that would be $1.1 million of mortgage payments for a $500,000 home. So you would end up paying $1.5 million for a $500,000 home. My grandfather, who was a World War II vet, he passed in 2018. He always told me that we don't want to pass down this national debt to the next generation, to our kids and our grandkids, to become slaves to China. I'm not worried about China anymore. I'm worried about becoming slaves to Wall Street. And the know-nothing Republicans and the do-nothing Democrats seem to be working together once again to push this usury on Americans. It is an absolute insult. If we want to get serious about housing affordability, the crisis that is staring down my generation, when my dad was growing up in the 1960s, half of 30-year-olds, half of them were married and owned their home. Today, only 15% of 30-year-olds are married and own their home. If you can't...
Now, he goes on from there. The 30-year mortgage and compound interest is already a scam.
Usury. 100% in a Christian nation that shouldn't exist.
See, now, Joe, what you just said, okay, what you just said, just so you know, not from my point of view, but from what everybody out there says, you're sounding an awful lot like Nick Fuentes and E. Michael Jones. You're an anti-Semite, you know. When you use words like usury, which is theft, E. Michael Jones points that out, and I want to talk about E. Michael Jones in a minute, but I want your comments first, all right? E. Michael Jones makes it clear in his book, Barren Metal, usury is the theft of your labor. When you buy a house like that gentleman said, when you're 20, now let's go with the 30-year mortgage. Let's not talk about the ridiculous idea of a 50-year mortgage. You buy your house when you're 25 years old, okay, which nobody could do now. $500,000 house. By the time you're 50, you've paid over $500,000 in interest payments. That's $500,000 over the course of that 30-year that could have gone to your kids, that could have gone towards their education. Why is it that we have to? Now, maybe an economist out there or somebody can explain to me why we're wedded to this system of usurious compound interest. But compound interest, as E. Michael Jones says and many others, is the theft of your labor. Think about working, Joe Resinolo, from 20 years old to 50 years old, and 500,000 after-tax dollars come out of your pocket and your wife's pocket and get sent to the bank because you borrowed $500,000 to buy your house. Now, I'll tell you a group that, and we'll come back to this, I'm going to throw it over to you. I'll tell you a group that doesn't go along with that. Muslims. They actually don't have usury in their cultures. Now, I don't know their system, so I'm not going to say how they go about lending money, but usury is actually enforced. The Catholic Church still teaches that usury is a mortal sin, yet it's not spoken about by our bishops. But it is in the Catholic world. Joe, I'll throw it over to you.
I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell everyone a little secret. I have 5 kids, and people may assume because I have 5 kids that I'm rich. I'm not rich. I make a decent living. My wife makes a decent living. She works from home. How do I afford 5 kids and send them to Catholic school? I bought a modest house for $395,000, and I paid it off in 5 years. I own my house.
Right.
That's how
That's how you do it.
That's how I have 5 kids. And I'm going to tell you this. If you calculate the interest that I would have paid if I decided to buy an $800,000 house, I could have done that. I put a large payment down on a modest home, and I paid it off in 5 years. That's how I have 5 kids. That's how I send them to Catholic school. Why did I do that? You see, this is the root of how we play into the hands of the loan sharks. Who are the banks? They're nothing more than loan sharks. You can get as good of a rate on the street. I'm starting to talk like Bernie Sanders, by the way.
That's all right. That's all right. You got the finger going and everything.
You could get as good of a rate on the street because we don't know who we are. I don't need an $800,000 house. I know who I am. I'm a regular guy, the son of a barber. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I want to raise my kids where it's safe. I want to educate them Catholic. I want to see them get married. I want to see my grandchildren. And then I will happily take a dirt nap because I did my job.
We don't want you to take the dirt
nap. But I'm just
anytime
saying,
soon.
that's all I want out of this life. And this is what America does not understand. And we fall into the trap of the loan sharks, which are the banks. We do the same thing with cars. Go to any lower middle class town wherever you live. I live in New Jersey. There are working class towns where I live. I'm going to name two: Garfield and Lodi. They're not poor, but they're lower middle class towns.
Very blue collar. Very blue collar.
Go to a garden apartment in Garfield, New Jersey, and look at the cars. Land Rovers, Mercedes, BMW. Do you know the interest they're paying on those cars?
Right.
And who's laughing? The bank.
The banks.
They're laughing because you're in. But why do we do it, Joe? This is where, in a society that's grounded in God, we know who we are. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I drive a 20-year-old car, but I have 5 kids. My wealth is my children.
Right.
I don't care. I have no one to impress. The only person I have to impress is God, and I don't have to impress him. I have to live up to the standard that he gives me as a Catholic. That's it. But America threw that away. And when we throw that away, it chases us into the arms of the bank. And that's why they're pitching a 50-year mortgage. And you know what, Joe Pasillo? People will go for it.
Oh no, they're gonna go for it, because what they do is they mistake a lower payment that they think in their mind. Because again, this is why you have to think. One of the things you could do if you want to help us if you want us to help you think, is listen to the Frontline with Joe and Joe, because we kind of hash this out in our own blue collar way. Because at the end of the day, Joe and I are just working guys. We don't make any money off this, not a dime. All right. So we do this because we think we have something to say. And if you're here, you probably think we have something to say. The problem is, Joe, people mistake the lower payment, the lower monthly payment, that translates to savings. But as that gentleman pointed out, and you pointed out, okay, and as many others have pointed out, whatever you buy,
Joe?
Joe, can you hear me?
Yep, we're good.
All right. So sorry about that, everybody at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Little technical difficulty. We got through it. But having said that, Joe, my larger point that I was about to make, and I hope everybody's still here. So, we're back at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. We're having a great conversation, and we're going to continue to have a great and important conversation tonight. Here's the thing. What I was saying before we were rudely cut off by the CIA, Joe, and I'm sure they're watching. The CIA and the FBI, I'm sure they're watching, okay? They don't like Catholic guys like us speaking the truth. Having said that, people need to realize, okay, that gentleman in that clip, he was talking about a 50-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. It's all a scam. It's all meant to steal your labor. The car that you mentioned, okay? You too could buy. Remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon when he says, you too could afford all these luxuries, right? So like they try to convince you that by going into debt, you can have what that guy has, but you can't have what that guy has. Now, I'm sorry that you can't. But if you're driving a Chevy Okay. And I drove those cars my whole life. I have no shame in driving used cars. Okay. But whether you drive a Chevy or a Nissan Altima or whatever the case might be, and that guy's driving a Mercedes, no, you cannot afford to own that car. You have to come to grips with that. You have to reconcile yourself to the fact that you don't make enough money to do so. Now, when you do, hopefully you do what Joe Resinello did and buy your home. And if you can't afford to buy it completely, go on a 5 or 10-year plan to get it done. When you start getting to 15, 20, 25, 30 years, your labor. It's your labor. It does not belong to anybody else except God. And that's in the Bible. Okay? You cannot give your labor or allow your labor to be stolen by the banks. So when it comes to that big car, when it comes to the 50 or 30-year mortgage, Joe, how about this, Joe? How about the credit cards, dude?
Oh, we just don't know how to live. Joe, we've said this on the show. Americans don't know how to live anymore. And by the way, I've said this too on the show. The art of marketing is a marketer understands you better than you understand yourself. They play the American people. That's what politicians do too. That's what we just saw with the government shutdown. They played the American people and it worked. Yep. They distracted them. And that is what marketers do. You too, as Joe Pasillo rightfully said, could have that car. Well, you're going to pay out your nose. What I have always said to people, and I've said this in the past, when you do your taxes, calculate all the interest you pay on 3 things: your credit card, your mortgage, and your cars. Calculate it over a course of 12 months. Put the number in a Sharpie on your refrigerator and stare at it every single time you open your refrigerator. And maybe you'll continue to lower it with each and every year.
I think if somebody was to do that,
I'm telling you, that's the secret.
I think if somebody was to do that, they need to be standing by their toilet bowl, because they're going to probably have to puke when they see that number, because they're going to be like, holy crap. Because remember, I'll give Obama credit, even though he's a shady, you know what. But he during his administration, they required the banks and the credit card companies to tell you how long it would take to pay off your $50,000 debt, making minimum payments or making a little bit more than the minimum payment. Okay, so I'll give him that much credit. That happened under his administration, so that all right, if instead of paying $100 a month towards my credit card debt, if I paid $175, I'll pay it off in 3 years instead of 15 years. Okay, that was good and useful. How about this? How about we go old school? Joe grew up in Newark. I grew up in Newark. Our parents have very little. They used to have layaway plans if you wanted to buy some. That means you didn't get the product until you paid it off. So guess what they did? They saved their money for 3 months. If my mother wanted that coat, Joe, you remember down at Seibel's on Broadway in Newark, right? All the Italian ladies, they go there, they'd give them $20 for the coat that they want, and they'd have to pay it quickly. And as soon as you pay it off, then you get the coat. So I remember the days of layaway. Having said that, how about this, everybody? Don't go into debt. Don't buy it. If you can't afford, that's a lesson of what I'm talking about with the layaway. If you can't afford it, don't buy it. If you can't afford a $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 car, because you will pay it off. And Joe, they're stretching that too, by the way. Just like this guy was talking about 50-year mortgages, they're stretching the car notes now to 84 months. Used to be 3 years, 4 years, maybe 5 years at most. Usually it was 3 years when we were growing up. You pay your car over 3 years. Now they're stretching it out in the same way.
Well,
so
why
the banks
not?
are just doing the
Because
same
people
thing
are
with the
going to do
mortgages.
it. We're going to do it. We're our own worst enemy. This is where I'm saying the answers are on the bottom. They don't come from the top. We have to get our house in order as a people again. You know, that again, using a little bit of historic benchmarks. Credit cards until the 80s had caps on the interest that they could pay. There were usually laws which were enforced. Citibank found a loophole in the state of South Dakota. I'm giving you some history here. And that's how credit cards opened up. You remember Diners Club? A credit card was for rich people. Case in point, Joe Pasillo's mom didn't have one. This is not too long ago. Right. That was a loophole in the law by Citibank. And now they opened it up and they enslaved people. Debt is slavery.
Thank you.
Repeat that Debt is
That
slavery.
is slavery. Now, I want to say this, and then we're going to move on. Okay, here at the front line with Joe and Joe, we got a lot to talk about tonight. We got Donald Trump, HB1 visas, Steve Bannon, Ben Shapiro, Nick Fuentes, Tim Dillon. We got it all for you tonight. We're going to have a great, great conversation. Sunday afternoon, Joe and I really don't have a time limit. So this is all stream of consciousness, and all of you are just going to have to deal with it. But I will tell you this, and then we'll move on. E. Michael Jones, and I know there's some in our circles, Joe, that disagree with this. E. Michael Jones sees an opportunity for Muslims and Catholics in particular, not just Christians. And I think he's saying that for a reason, that it's Catholics, to come together because fundamentally on certain moral issues, we happen to agree with Muslims, okay? Usury is one of them. Okay. Now I can hear the cries of anti-Semitism right now. We're not discussing
Catholics. I don't think that's fair though, because Catholics participate in usury too. Christians,
I know,
many
but
Christians
they're not.
do.
But they're not. We are not supposed to participate in.
But
usury.
we do.
Oh no, I know. I'm not excusing individual Catholic show or even Catholic priests or bishops that say, "Well, okay, it is what it is." No, it actually isn't. Because you could really make that same argument about abortion if you want to. Well, it is what it is. Well, we don't do that with abortion. Why should we do that with the theft of our labor? If you steal someone's labor, Joe, that is a violation of the commandment.
That's a sin that cries to heaven for vengeance in the Bible.
Right. In the Bible.
Cries, how's that one? Cries to heaven for vengeance.
Vengeance, right? So how serious is it when someone works and you don't give them their just wage, or they get their just wage, but then you concoct systems to convince them that they should go into usurious debt,
predatory loans on the poor.
Right. But when Obama says predatory lending, we know what he means. When we say it, oh, you must be anti-Semitic. But leaving that aside, the bottom line is this: we all need to get ourselves out of debt. And I will tell everybody this: I have a little bit of debt. All right, and I'm being full disclosure here. I have a little bit of debt. I am making it my business that by June of next year, whatever that little bit might be, is gone. You want to know why? Because if it's even $1 out of my son's inheritance, and he won't get an inheritance if you know what I mean, but whatever I have to leave to him when I kick off and the Lord calls me home, God willing he will, then that dollar is better off in my son's pocket than it is in the bank's pocket. So whatever little debt we have, I'm getting rid of. And it'll take I calculate, like you did with your home, Joe, you said about 5 years.
5 years.
I calculate the next 7 or 8 months, whatever I have, just going to bang it out, get it done, get rid of it. And moreover, don't go back into debt. Debt is slavery. And we're here because we want to try to help people free themselves from a lot of this nonsense. So anyway, Joe, Donald Trump has lost touch with Americans. He really has. The people that voted for him are very, very, very pissed off for a variety of reasons. Here is Donald Trump with Laura Ingraham. Please comment in the comment section and chime in, and we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it when we come back.
Never going to be a country like what we have right now.
And does that
the
mean
Republicans have to talk about it, Laura.
And does that mean the H-1B visa thing will not be a big priority for your administration? Because if you want to raise wages for American workers, you can't flood the country with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
You also do have to bring in talent. When
we have plenty of talented people here.
No, you don't.
We don't have talented people here?
No, you don't have. You don't have certain talents, and people have to learn. You can't take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you into a factory where we're going to make missiles, or I'm going to put
How did we ever do it before?
Well,
I'll
give you an example. In Georgia, they raided because they wanted illegal immigrants out. They had people from South Korea that made batteries all their lives. You know, making batteries are very complicated. It's not an easy thing and very dangerous. A lot of explosions, a lot of problems. They had like 500 or 600 people, early stages, to make batteries and to teach people how to do it. Well, they wanted them to get out of the country. You're going to need that, Laura. I mean, I know you and I disagree on this. You can't just say a country's coming in, going to invest $10 billion to build a plant, and going to take people off an unemployment line who haven't worked in 5 years, and they're going to start making missiles. It doesn't work that way.
Okay. She is absolutely right, and Donald Trump is absolutely wrong. There are plenty of Americans, Joe, who have knowledge. Joe, I work with a guy who runs our valet in front of our restaurant. I've never seen a more creative guy in my life. He's like from Minnesota. He just makes things because he's got a brain like tens of millions of other Americans. How about this? Pluck them out of their crappy situation. Why don't you, instead of all the nonsense that you're funding, okay, that we were supposed to get rid of because of Doge, how about you start immediately creating trade schools that are going to teach all these kids, like my son, okay, who I already know is not going to go to college, not for an academic career anyway, okay, not to become a lawyer or a doctor. How about my son? Maybe he could go learn how to make those batteries that Donald Trump was talking about, or how to code, or how to understand computer chips and all that. You waste all this money giving it to Harvard and Yale and University of Maine and University of Washington, $100 billion a year. And you're going to tell me, Donald Trump, that you can't say to Harvard, you know what? You've gotten enough money over the years. You're done. We're taking the money we give to you. You could go to your donors. You could go to all your alumni, and you could go get money from them. We're going to take that money, and we're going to create regional trade schools that thousands of kids could go to coming out of high school, and they'll learn all those jobs. And guess what? You know who will hire them? What's his name from Apple? Tim Cook. Okay, Elon Musk. Okay, the heads of all these companies. They'll want all those kids because guess what? They'll be trained. They'll be trained to be able to do those jobs. Donald Trump's absolutely wrong. We don't have to import labor. We have plenty of people here who are suffering and are hungry, and will learn like that how to go get those jobs and get paid. Joe, your thoughts?
Let me just explain what an HB1 visa, how it works. Basically, what that does is a company gets, say, an engineer from Eastern Europe or, say, India, and brings them in at a lower wage, and that person does not have the mobility to leave the company. So basically, it's almost a form of indentured servitude. I'm going to let you come in here. I'm going to pay you a lower wage than the American or the legal citizen that's sitting next to you, and you have to stay, because if you don't stay, you lose your status and you have to go back to your home country, and there isn't that opportunity. So that's how it works. That soundbite, Donald Trump did not articulate, and if you ask me, the whole picture here. There's two aspects to this. When Laura Ingraham said to him, this is what I think, thinking into it, they can't do those jobs. Donald Trump believes in merit-based immigration, meaning he doesn't want the guy who's going to pick fruit in California vineyard to come into the country. He wants engineers, he wants MBAs, he wants doctors. Some of those HB1 visas, I'm willing to bet when he made that reference, is what's referenced as a brain drain. I'm taking highly skilled people from countries that basically the average citizen anywhere in the world couldn't do that job. Now, that is good for our country. The problem is selling that to the MAGA base. They're not going to buy it. They don't want to hear it. And that's what came out on that interview. Laura Ingraham exploited that. He should have articulated it a little better. He didn't. But even if he did, people wouldn't like it. It's an ugly message. However, and I didn't see the figures, and I'm speculating, if that same HB1 system that I explained to you how it works is a part of what he's saying, that does hurt Americans. That does hurt the average college graduate who's, say, an engineer or who, say, is an accountant. Because what it does do, it allows corporations to hire labor at a lower cost. It gives the advantage to the oligarch versus the person.
And hence, that's what we talk about all the time on this show. Joe, I got a cousin, right? My cousin's a successful accountant. All right, he works in New York City. He's younger than me. He's about 10, 12 years younger than me. My cousin, if he couldn't get a job as an accountant, is an educated man, okay? And he would go and get re-educated within 6 months, and he would take any one of those jobs. And he does very well as an accountant. His father was my uncle was an accountant. He's an accountant, okay? That's the Jewish side of my family. My cousin would crush it. Why? Because he has a solid foundation. He's got a solid education. He is already a professional. And what do people do, Joe? What have people done in all of human history? When circumstances arise that they have to pivot, you know what they do? They pivot. And then back to another thing that you said, okay? With Donald Trump, my mother and your grandmother would not be able to come here. And I have a problem with that. My mother did not speak the language. My mother was poor, uneducated, had a third grade, according to American standards. My mother to this day is functionally illiterate. Very hard time reading. She's 86 now. Okay. Under Trump's plan or his ideas, my mother and your grandparents wouldn't be able to come here. And I have a real problem with that. I don't want their engineers. I want people that are actually going to come here who say, I love America. I love the concept of America. I could be free. I have freedom of speech. I could get into the economy. Joe, I'm going to throw this right over to you. How many guys, immigrants that you know came to this country and built small businesses and created great lives for themselves,
Tons
financially speaking? Diners, restaurants, different industries, trucking companies, and everything else. What did they have when they came here? Nothing. Zero. My grandfather, my father's father, okay, came here in 1908. I saw his name in the register at Ellis Island. Okay, he dug ditches during the depression for $1 a day. My father always said, your grandfather's job during the depression was draining the meadowlands for $1 a day because that's what they paid those guys. Saved his money, owned and bought a grocery store. Your mom knows my grandfather's old grocery store on Broadway in Newark. Okay, because she told me about that. He saved his money. He bought a grocery store. Under Donald Trump's plan, they don't even get to this country. I got a real problem with that. Your thoughts?
I was against merit-based immigration from the start too.
And you're right. You're right for that.
But that's what he's proposing there. It was a bad soundbite. MAGA doesn't like it, and that's sort of the theme of this show. He's not talking to his base, or he's taking his base for granted, and that is not going to bode well for him in the midterms. Nope. How quick the human mind forgets or takes basically things for granted. That is what that message, the average person, and I do, because of this show, have to scroll on X to find clips, as Joe does as well. We have to keep abreast of things. And the comments, they ate him alive this week in the press cycle because of that. He didn't articulate the message well, and even if he did, MAGA isn't buying it.
That's
and
right.
Obviously, politics are politics, and when you're the president versus what you say, the real world comes into play, and the gift is to sell it. Well, he lost on this message, and he lost big.
No, he did. I want to throw this out there to you. I mentioned earlier, E. Michael Jones sees an alliance between, let's call them conservative Muslims and Catholics in particular in America to fight against a lot of this nonsense and the woke nonsense. But now I watched E. Michael Jones' recent podcast, and he says flat out that Zoran Mandani, and he's not putting a positive spin on it. I think he's being very truthful. I think he hit onto something. He said the Democrat Party is focused on transgender and homosexuality and abortion and everything else. He goes, why did Mamdani get elected the mayor of New York City? And Jones says, by the way, I'm not a socialist. I don't know why he has to convince people of that. We know he's not a socialist. Okay. He said, because Mamdani tapped into the working class.
100%. That's what and we talked about that a little bit last show. That's what the Chamber of Commerce Republicans don't get. They don't get it. I watched a clip of Mamdani going out himself, interviewing street vendors. He said, how much is that plate of food? They're like, $10. How much is it worth? $8. How hard is it for you to get a license, and what do you have to pay to get it? Well, it costs me X amount of money, and it takes the X amount of time. If I could, this is him talking on the street, streaming, and then putting that on social media. If I could cut that down and basically eliminate that cost, how much will that plate of food cost? $8. Bingo. That's what a regular person wants to hear. Mamdani got it. He tapped in. Again, he understands people more than they understand themselves. There's a lot of baggage with Mamdani. I'm not supporting him. I don't believe in his answer. But what I do believe, and I believe exactly what Bernie Sanders says. Me and Bernie Sanders would agree on a lot of the problems. We just don't agree on the solutions.
Right.
The Chamber of Commerce Republicans, and we're going to play a clip by Ben Shapiro a little bit later, they don't get it. They actually think, oh, what's the difference? $8, $10 for the plate of food? I can afford it. I got news for you, Ben Shapiro. A lot of people can't. Get it through your head. And the Chamber of Commerce Republican can't get that. I work with these people. I've talked to them. It's not just when you're making $40,000 a year and you got 2 to 3 kids and you live in Queens, you're barely surviving.
Oh, I worked in New York City for years, as you know, right, as a server, and I knew a lot of guys. They would come in what they called street meat, right? And some of those stands are really good, by the way.
Oh no, you find the right ones, no doubt.
No, listen. If Dickie D sold hot dogs, but just because he had a storefront didn't mean his food wasn't, wasn't the best quality, because it was. Well, a guy who gets the ingredients, and just because he's cooking it on the street doesn't mean it isn't good quality vegetables and all the bread and all that he's putting into it. But a lot of guys I worked with, right now, my wife fed me, so whatever. But there was times where I had to stop for something. Yeah, $2 more or $2 less in my pocket if I'm serving tables, trying to eke out a living. Yeah, okay, I'm sure if you live on the Upper West Side or the Upper East Side, it doesn't matter. You got the liberal left, let's say on the Upper West Side, and you got basically the liberal right on the Upper East Side. And they all don't give a shit. Sorry, Joe. I know you don't like when I curse, but they don't give a damn about that $2. But you know who does? I do. My friends did. People who go to work. How about all the secretaries, Joe? How about all the office managers? They say, I'm hungry. I got to eat something. I'm going to go get a hot dog. I'm going to go get some halal meat, whatever the case might be. Yeah, $2, $3 more
Joe,
that they're saving.
I work in New York City. I'll just throw some numbers. You buy breakfast in New York City, costs you maybe $8. You buy a cup of coffee, it costs you $4. If you buy 2, you've just spent $8 on coffee. We're up to 16. If you buy lunch every day, that's another 20. That's $36 a day times 5. Right. And I'm not talking about fancy stuff here. I'm talking about a basic breakfast, a bagel and a cup of coffee in the morning. I'll cut it down again. 1 other cup of coffee. So now you got 8, now another 4, that's 12, now 20 for lunch. That's how much lunch costs in New York. That is $32 a day times 5 times 4 a month times 12 a year.
About 7 G's.
If you make tons of money, if I make $500,000, who cares? Buy 6 cups of coffee. Buy people coffee. Come with me. I'm going to buy you coffee. I don't care. But if you're a regular guy, and that's what Mamdani did, he went out there, talked to regular people. Come here. I want to talk to you. How much does it cost for this lunch? People are like, you know something? I can't afford that $20 lunch, but I have to pay for it because I got to eat.
Right.
So ultimately, he gets the problem, and Charlie Kirk got the problem. Charlie Kirk talked about this too. If the Republicans don't get it, we are going to get socialism in America, because the system, we talked about the 50-year mortgage, it doesn't work for people anymore. Right. Get it through your head. If you're not a high earner, you don't make a couple $100,000 a year. And that does not make you rich in the Northeast. I'm telling you this right now. No. It does not. If you are not, and there are plenty of people out there who are like that, they make a normal salary. The average salary in America, if my memory serves, it's $66,000 a year. You make $66,000 a year in America, you're eating ramen noodles every day. And you're lucky if you have a roof over your head.
Right.
And if you have a family, your kids are poor.
But here's the thing. I guess according to Ben Shapiro, you got to deal with
a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up. But the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities.
Leaving aside everything that Ben Shapiro has been through recently, okay, and the squabbles and Nick Fuentes and everything else, okay? And that's a conversation for another day. My problem with Ben Shapiro and Dinesh D'Souza, by the way, a Christian and a Jew, is that from my viewing, when I listen to them, they bow at the altar of the free market. They both bow to the altar of the free market. They will not accept that there are moral boundaries. No, Ben, no, I am not moving anywhere, and I'm going to fight politically. within the system in New York City. Because my sister and my brother-in-law live in New York City. They live in Queens. Why does my sister have to move? Because Ben Shapiro says, well, maybe you should move if you can't afford to leave here. How about we make it more affordable? And
that's what Mamdani tapped into. And we're going to see more of that, Joe Pasillo, as this country, when you talk about a 50-year mortgage to a guy that works hard. I work 60 hours a week, someone might say. Why do I have to be enslaved for 50 years? Right. No, Ben Shapiro, we have to fix the system. How about we break up BlackRock? How about we do that? Right. How about we basically start putting some sanctions on companies? Now, Joe Resinello sounds like a socialist. No, Joe Resinello is practical. You just don't let someone run roughshod over people. By the way, the stock market's, what is it, 45,000 the Dow? Only 11% of America own 80% of the stocks. 50% and lower own none. So what does that number mean to half the country? Nothing. Zero. It means nothing.
Ben Shapiro and Dinesh D'Souza and people like him, they want to go out there and convince you, yes, I agree. I'm in fundamental agreement. And so, by the way, is Catholic social teaching.
Yes.
If you turn around tomorrow, Dinesh D'Souza gives the example in a famous exchange he had, went viral. I watched it on certain key points in what he said. I agree with him. He says, who gets the money if $3,000 a day is spent on valet parking by the customers of the Marriott, okay, or the whatever, the Ritz-Carlton, and the valet guy gets $150 a day. Where's the other $28.50 going? And I agree with D'Souza. Yes, the Ritz-Carlton, they organized the business. They took the risk. They did all that. Okay, fine. But what you're failing to see, Dinesh, and what Ben Shapiro is saying in that clip is, but you're talking purely about a system, and you seem to be discounting the idea that the system is designed. And here's my fundamental point, Joe, that I'm going to throw over to you. And this is rock solid Catholic Pope Leo XIII teaching. This is my version of it. The system is designed to serve the people. The problem is we have a system where the people are there to serve the system. That is a fundamental problem with the relationship between the individual and the family and the economy. And the politicians and the business owners have both colluded to make it that way.
100%. And that's where people, if you ask me, all have to figure out, and if you ask me, have to unite to break the back of the oligarchs that run everything. Your enemy next door, while you may not agree with him on social issues, and I don't on many, you are going to get flushed down the toilet too unless you unite with him. Sorry. And if you like the smell of sewage, well, that's exactly where you're going to go.
You're going to get it
right next to you. People have to figure out that the oligarchs, through the pay-to-play system, and they give to both sides, have robbed America from you. And that's Catholics, that's Jews, that's atheists, that's agnostics, that's evangelicals, because they're all part of the oligarch bucket.
Right.
They worship money.
Well, look,
and they don't care about you, and it shows in the policies. Case in point, do you know that America is one of 2 countries that permits pharmaceutical sales to be advertised on television? That's thanks to Bill Clinton. Only 2 countries. What does that do? That compromises the FDA because of the money that they give to the government. That's just one example. I could give a million.
I know. And by the way, money that both Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren both take from this pharmaceutical industry, yet Bernie wants to point the finger on the other side to the Republicans. No, Bernie, you take a lot of money.
100%. He would not, Bernie Sanders would not be there if he did not.
Wasn't for the cash.
He wouldn't be there.
That's right.
You think like anyone? I got another secret to tell you. Platforms. We have a producer in Canada, John Smith, great guy. He's been very good to us. But I will tell you this. That's not his name. I just don't want him to get arrested.
Yeah, we don't want him to get arrested.
Just so you know. But platforming is everything. If you don't have a platform, you don't have a show.
Right.
That is why they're all there. We don't understand how the system works, the average person. I used to be that person. I became politically aware as a result of COVID. I started to dig a little deeper and started to think a little bit more critically of people and of things and of institutions. And that's what people have to do. I'm not going to bicker with the person who doesn't agree with me. We don't agree. Fair. But they don't have power, and neither do I. Get that through your head.
But I will, can I throw this out to you, though? Even those in power, and we've seen this, you kind of see scenes in movies where the politician, the charismatic politician's giving a speech in like a union hall or something, but the pain in the ass union guy in the back stands up and he's got, can I ask you a question? And he's hit over the head and he's dragged out. Here's my larger point. Because we're going to talk about Bannon. We're going to play a couple clips from Bannon. Joe and I are big fans of Bannon. We talk about E. Michael Jones all the time. I don't care what Catholic doesn't like him. Okay? We do. All right? That doesn't mean we agree with him on everything, but we do, and we value his views. Nick Fuentes, we don't agree with him on everything. We value his views. The reason why I bring up the guy in the back of the Union Hall, Joe, those are the guys in the back. Even though Bannon's rich, Bannon is still the guy in the back of the Union Hall. They'll club him over the head and they'll throw him in jail. They already did once. Okay? So let's be clear. Just because Bannon has money doesn't mean he's insulated. My point is that the power structures have always feared popular support for those who would oppose them. So if you have popular support out there for ideas that oppose me, and I'm the emperor, the president, the Congress, dare I say Nancy Pelosi or any other oligarch or whoever the case might be, I'm going to club you over the head. I'm going to drag you away. We thought Donald Trump was that guy, and he better pivot soon. We'll get back to him in a minute. Because as we said here at the front line with Joe and Joe, he has lost touch with guys like us. And I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who say the same thing. Well, I'm going to play a couple clips from Bannon. We'll come back and we'll hash it out for a little bit. Joe, just my 2 cents. Bannon's the man.
Well, I think we're seeing it play out right in front of our eyes. And what we're seeing out of the conservatives is that conservatives, having conserved nothing, are attempting to conserve conservatism. And at this point, I kind of think it's a luxury value. And Trump is out there just destroying the movement. I mean, the last 3 days have literally just been disaffected MAGA people who've been on the Trump train for 10 years, DMing me some of the most horrifying and ridiculous stuff. Like, one of them was like, God saved Trump so that he could give us 50-year mortgages. There are people that are really bleak and unhappy right now. And just to like rewind, you know, we are talking about an election and everybody can dismiss it. There's a whole bunch of Democrat places dismissing, you know, voting for Democrat people. But what really was the story is that independents and crossover Democrats did not turn out for Trump at this point. His approval rating's not that bad. He's got a 45% approve, 54% disapprove, so he's underwater, 9 points. Not as bad as Biden this time 4 years ago, but he had the Afghanistan crisis, but the lowest of his term so far, and we lost the 40% right direction numbers down to 37%. But people deserted the Republican Party in a very predictable manner because all of the copium that the Republicans did back in the fall, the country moved towards Republicans. Everybody's Republican. We're registering Republicans everywhere. Scott Pressler's like magic. We're so great. Everything's back. When in reality, what it was is that it was a referendum, like I've told you many times, on government trust and the Biden era basically clown world that we saw that destroyed the...
Right, to socialize the risk. Because remember, I said all of this is about risk mitigation, to socialize the risk. And you guys keep all the upside. That has to stop. This is why young people don't believe in capitalism. Because you know what? That is not capitalism. That's corporatism. So what young people in this country, being logical, have looked around. They haven't actually seen capitalism at work. They've seen crony capitalism, or they've seen corporatism with the devil take the hindmost approach. It has to stop. And it has to stop about artificial intelligence. If they're going to have, and we need somebody to sit there and go, hey, this is what the capital requirements are. This is how it rolls out over the next couple of years. Understanding that every projection I've ever seen never hits it exactly right. Of course, there's going to be perturbations. There's going to be changes. There's going to be sometimes misses. Sometimes you're wrong by years. But at least you have a general direction of the action you're taking today and how that, in your thinking, manifests itself in the future. So we just not, there's hundreds of billions of dollars now, not just for data centers, but to power the data centers. And who's supposed to finance that? You. Do you own a warrant package? Do you have equity package? Do you have a package of options? Do you have anything? No. You know what you got? You got the sweat on your frickin' brow, and you're the full faith and credit. Always remember that you, this audience, these great patriots that have delivered victory after victory against all odds, you got the sweat on your brow, and the tax man all over you to pay your taxes. And those
let's leave it there. Everybody gets the gist of where Bannon's going with that. But there's a lot just in that minute and a half, Joe, to unpack. Let's start with full faith, credit, and taxing power of the United States government. I learned that when I was in college. That's going back a fairly long time. I learned what that phrase meant. That basically means the government has the power to tax you into oblivion. That they back debt by saying, we have taxing power. So full faith and credit, yeah, those things are important. Their taxing power is the most important thing. If we can't pay you, Mr. Lender, we'll just tax Joe Resinello, Joe Pasillo, and everybody out there watching them. The longshoreman, the maid. Doesn't matter if you're rich. The rich still won't get affected too much by it because they're rich, but all of us will suffer. That's the first thing that's got to be addressed, because the bottom line is this. As Bannon said, they know that they can go out and borrow money because they'll just impose more taxes on us. And Republicans will do the same thing. For all everybody out there, well, Republicans for cutting taxes. When the bill comes due and it's their ass on the line, they're going to tax you right up your you-know-what. Let's start there, Joe.
Absolutely. And ultimately, dude, Bannon is speaking basically our language. And when everything that takes place, what you just said, what results? Inflation. And that is an indirect tax on the working poor. The rich can handle it. Oh, that sandwich cost me $35?
Who cares?
Whatever. Who cares? I'll pay for it. You're not going to spend $35 on a sandwich, though. And that is exactly what we're seeing. That's why the inflation is not going away. Donald Trump sold the American people on that. He also sold the American people a message which was in that clip. And this is the fundamental reason why many people voted for him. It was an anti-corruption platform. I am not part of the system. Well, he's proving to be a part of the system. Case in point, the money he takes from lobbies. Second case in point, Doge comes in, points out tons of discrepancies, and then Elon Musk leaves in a huff because basically he's like, what am I doing here? Wasting my time. Second point.
Saying what? Saying what, though, real quick on that point, Joe? Saying that basically Elon Musk, who's a pretty smart guy, said, I can find all the savings that I want to. They're not going to do anything about it. Go ahead.
And it shows in the big, beautiful bill.
That's right. That's what I'm saying.
So
we're not pulling that out of our ass.
Waste this time. Then we go to war. We bomb Iran. No wars. We're going to end Ukraine in a day. It's still going on. And I believe, if I'm wrong, please put it in the chat. We still may be sending some money to that, which, by the way, it was in a clip this week by Ron Paul. There's $100 million scandal going on with one of Zelensky's aides. That's our money.
That's our money.
That's my money. That's your money. So this is what Donald Trump platformed. And again, obviously it's politics. It's not going to be apple for apple, pear for pear. However, this is what people wanted out of him. If you ask me, and people aren't going to like this, especially on the left, Donald Trump doesn't take it far enough. I want him to break the back of the system.
Well, we're going to get into that in a little bit with Nick Fuentes, but go ahead.
That is what I want, because the system doesn't work for the liberal or the conservative.
See, but liberals, Joe, I'm not going to give them a pass. You want to know why? because everything their leadership tells them, as long as they give them abortion, contraception, gay marriage, transgenderism, and all the social issues, liberals who are getting robbed, is like you just said, very rightly so, liberals who are getting robbed blind, just like everybody else. If you're a blue-collar stevedore down at Port Newark, what do you give a shit about gay marriage? Let's be honest. What do you care about it? And if you're Roman Catholic, which you probably are, if you're a blue-collar living in North Jersey, then maybe you should stand up against abortion.
But they don't care. Because
they don't care. You're right.
You,
they don't care.
They don't care. And that's another problem altogether. And what people don't tie into it is that's breaking down the fabric of the nation. It's breaking down the family. And from the breakdown of the family, we have all sorts of problems. But they don't tie those things together because, frankly, many people, that's their lifestyle. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just stating reality.
But it's true, Joe. But it's true. Now, you're not, I know, look, one thing we definitely strive not to be on this show at the front line with Joe and Joe is I'm not judging anybody, but I am going to point out, if you want to point out flaws in my thinking, we have a chat room right there. You could jump in. You could say anything you want to Joe and Joe. All right. And you could ask us anything you want. We don't shy away from anybody. And we've always said, we don't care. We'll debate anybody. All right. On any of these topics. Okay. But we're not judging you, but there's rightful criticism. Like, and Joe, I grew up with them. I grew up with them in Newark, blue collar guys, working Teamster guys. And they're always voting Democrat. My father, God rest his soul. All right. Not a great Catholic, but always, always, always pro-life. He says, I used to watch him tell the guys he worked, well, I can't vote for them. And they say, well, it's a lot of things, but they're too crazy on abortion and all that. And they would berate my father for saying that. In the meantime, every one of them was a Roman Catholic. Every single one of them. They're more interested in what they think the Democrat Party could do for them, and they don't give a crap about all the other issues that, like you said, Joe, I know guys whose families are completely asunder because of sending their young boys and girls to public colleges, okay? And the parents come home who raised them as Roman Catholics to be moral people, coming home calling their parents. I've seen this, by the way. I'm not making this up, okay? Calling their parents racist. Calling their parents homophobic, calling their parents all sorts of names. The reason these parents are powerless. But I want to tell them sometimes, you voted for this crap. You voted for it because you were too blind. You were too ideologically blind to say something, to do something, to stand up. All right. Trump, we thought, was actually going to give us some kind of a voice on this. He's failed. I'm sorry.
Well,
at this point, he's failed.
Ultimately, though, that comes... We have that's another conversation, and I think the larger point here is people don't tie that. It does. They think it doesn't affect them, but it does. It does affect you. It definitely does affect you. Our country, we're living in a post-Christian society. People have no accountability. And that's part of the reason why they feel free to rob you. In a Christian society, you don't do that because I'm accountable to God. I'm going to be judged. I'm not going to rob you. I will charge you a fair price, and I will give you a good service. That's how a Christian society works. Right. But we don't live in that anymore. There's no shame, and I will take what I can because I can, and that's how it works. And that comes from those things, the breakdown of those things. Another conversation for another day. But ultimately, like Joe, getting to your point, we have to reel some things in. The government is out of control. And we thought Donald Trump was going to take it. I actually did. And he has. I'm not completely off the Trump team. I'd vote for him again. He was the better of the two options.
I would too.
There's not even a comparable. But here's the thing. And Nick Fuentes, the clip we're going to play of him, he gives everyone a little breathing room. Maybe it's good that people are uncomfortable, that we get that revolutionary spirit.
That's right.
That more people kind of say enough, because there are voices growing. And these voices are heard if you look at the numbers on social media, and the power brokers are concerned. They are.
Right. And
that is why Larry Ellison bought CBS News, and that is why he bought TikTok. They're trying to reel in the message. It's not going to work, Larry.
Not going to work.
No one cares about CBS News anymore.
what I said earlier about the annoying guy in the back of the Union Hall that's questioning the party leader or the politician or whoever it is up on the dais and questioning with questions. He gets clubbed over the head, but everybody notices that guy got clubbed over the head. And you know what everybody else in the Union Hall says is, well, if you're telling me something that's actually good and valuable to me, why'd you club him over the head? All he was doing was asking you a question. So why are you doing that? My larger point, and this is for all those out there, I said, and I think you agreed with me on this show back when Donald Trump almost got killed, almost got his brains blown out, that yes, I do believe that God saved him. But if you remember, Joe, and I think our audience will remember, I also said, but don't think that you know what God saved him for, because then that means you think you know the mind of God. Donald Trump could be used by God to wake us all up. He's no savior. He's not Jesus Christ. He is the furthest from a saint, okay? But what he is somebody who God could find useful to usher in the next phase, which Nick Fuentes is going to talk about, the next phase. And Trump was good and useful for that, to put like a, what would you call it, like a stop on the left and their juggernaut, okay, and their thievery, their stealing of elections and everything that they want, to, like you said, maybe give us a little bit of a breathing room. And so a lot of people, well, Donald Trump, like somebody said earlier, I think we played one of, somebody said Donald Trump said, or God saved Donald Trump so he could give us 50-year mortgages. Are you, I'm sorry, Joe, if I sound harsh. Are you stupid? Like, if you think that, are you just dumb? Or are you not a reasoning person? A 50-year mortgage, Donald Trump, God saved Donald Trump so he could give us 50-year mortgages. So on a $500,000 house over 50 years, you could pay over $1 million in interest. That's why God saved Donald Trump. Or maybe God saved Donald Trump because Donald Trump is useful to stop the juggernaut, or at least push back a little bit, while the next person who's really going to do the right thing comes into power. Let's hear what Nick Fuentes has to say.
He's just as bad as the Democrats. The only difference is Trump has given people a false sense of victory. Trump has lulled people into complacency. Everybody thought the people triumphed when Trump won. He's different. He's talking like the rest of us. That's what is particularly sinister about the Trump movement, is the way that it functioned as a Trojan horse. Biden was worse. Kamala would have been worse. But at least with Kamala, nobody would be under any illusions. Would Kamala be better? No, she would have been far worse. The economy would be worse. Immigration would be worse. It all would be worse. But here's what matters, and here's the difference. Nobody would be under any illusions about what it is. That it's illegitimate. The elections are fake. The government's corrupt. She's not really in charge. The system hates us. There'd be no love lost there. And everybody would be acutely aware of the problem. You'd have righteous indignation. You'd have anger. There'd be a revolutionary fervor. But instead, with Trump, you get the pressure release valve. And no matter what he says or what he does, 50% of his audience, he has this diehard base of supporters. They'll support it no matter what. If he bombs Iran, they'll support it. If he brings in 500,000 Chinese students, they'll say he doesn't really mean it. If he fails to deport people, they'll say, well, who cares? The border's secure, so what? That's the problem. And so this is when you start to begin to think politically and start to think about what our real end game is. My end game is not to elect Republicans and be marginally better than the Democrats. No, my end game is I do want an energetic president. I want an energetic, forward-thinking, progressive, disruptive, populist executive branch that is going to fucking break the back of the power in the country and put Americans first. No more kickbacks, no more deals, no more corruption, no more special interests, no more super PACs. We literally need a real leader that is actually popular and in control with agency, someone smart to get in, fire everybody, bring in his own people, and literally make the trains run on time. Literally build the new cities, raise the skyscrapers from the ground, build the factories, put us on a war footing. Make the fucking country great again. That's all I'm interested in. If it's not that, I don't want it.
Boom! Dude, right. That's it.
Now, I would just expand what he said one step further. We need an authentically unafraid, unabashed, faithful Roman Catholic who understands all of this stuff, who is also, Fuentes mentioned, politically savvy, okay? So he can understand he's got to appeal to everybody. But let's be clear. You want to talk about 50-year mortgages and the things that Donald Trump is proposing and nonsensical things and bombing Iran. A faithful Roman Catholic who understands Catholic social teaching in particular, we'll get to the economy on that, okay, and understands all the problems. Well, guess what you got to do? In that new regime that Fuentes is talking about, Bessent doesn't get hired. Lutnick doesn't get hired. Jared Kushner doesn't get hired. None of these people get hired. When the Republicans come to Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader come to you, assuming they're Republican, to say, Mr. President, you need to bring on this guy. That president that Nick Fuentes is talking about says, I got my guys in place. I appreciate your input, but we're going to put things in. Yeah, but what are you going to do? You're about to find out. And Jamie Dimon and Goldman Sachs and all the rest of them, they better get it. They're not going out of business. Nobody's talking about putting banks out of business or any of these companies out of business. But what you're not going to get is you're not going to get your favorite. You're not going to get treated in a favorable way over the needs of very everyday American people. Sorry, Jamie. Guess what's going to happen? Your credit cards that you issue, whether it's Chase, whether it's Bank of America, you're not going to be able to charge 28% interest anymore. Sorry. We don't even want you to charge interest, but at best you're going to get about 8%. Okay, that's it. And yeah, your profits are going to get curtailed, but you're still going to make a lot of money. Your shares of your stock is going to go down about 40%, but it'll regroup as stocks do, and then it'll start to come back, but you're going to get shaved. And all your boys are going to have to get used to a new paradigm. The paradigm, dare I say, and where I think Nick Fuentes was going with this, and then I'm going to throw it to you, it's got to be in line, not with the Whig interpretation of history and the Protestant capitalist view, not with the Marxist view, okay? Neither one. You know what America needs a good dose of? Catholic social teaching. And I'm not far off, because we covered it a couple weeks ago with the head of the Teamsters and Sean and Josh Hawley in a Senate hearing talking about Pope Leo XIII and Rerum Novarum and Catholic social teaching. That is for me, you could tell me if you disagree, Joe, and anybody out there in the chat room could tell me if you disagree. That is a clear sign that we could be moving in the right direction along the lines of what Nick Fuentes is talking about.
America would never vote for Catholic social.
We have to make it, though.
I agree. I agree with you, but they'll never do the Protestant right and with the Chamber of Commerce Republican have no interest in it. Zero.
But, Joe, I want to throw you a scenario. I'm sorry. I really don't cut you off anymore, but I'm going to throw this right back to you. Let me ask a question. This is not a comment. It's a question. Let's say you had that. Let's say it's J.D. Vance. I'm just saying. And let's say he's really wants to implement some ideas outlined in the last 130 years in Catholic social teaching on these issues, okay? If you go to an evangelical Christian, okay, or a working class Jew, or a working class Muslim, and you say, you know what, we're going to apply in our system, our American system, our economic system, we're going to apply some Catholic social teaching. And here's how it will benefit you, Mr. truck driving Jewish guy, Mr. cab driving Muslim guy, the evangelical Protestant. Okay, Joe, remember, Catholic, I don't need to remind you, is universal. The ideas apply to everybody. My larger point, and I'm going to throw it right to you, I think you could sell it to working class Americans who are not necessarily Catholic, who would say, you want to know what? I might not be Catholic, but those ideas are really good.
But here's the thing, Joe, they don't count. If J.D. Vance wants to push that on America, his donors will walk away from him, because that's how the system works. And that's what Fuentes is talking about, breaking how the system works. And that's what I voted for with Donald Trump. And that's when I say he didn't take it far enough. Keep in mind, the powers that be, when they said he's a threat to democracy, that was not what it was about. It was about he was a threat to them. Look at how they went at Donald Trump. It's a study in history. It's never taken place ever before, because he threatened the power brokers. It had nothing to do with us. Those were the people who were fooled, just like they were fooled with the government shutdown, as if it was about Donald Trump. No, it was about winning an election and getting your mind off the crime in the cities. It's not about you. It's about the institutional democracy, and that's what Nick Fuentes there is talking about. I'm interested in the person that's going to break the back of the institutional democracy, and I thought, as well as many, that Donald Trump was going to take it further. And many of the things that we pointed out in this show, as well as the recent ones, he's not the guy that's going to do it.
But perhaps I'm going to push back a little bit. But number one is perhaps Donald Trump, as I mentioned earlier, about people talking about God's providence and God saved Donald Trump. My view is Trump. I will agree with that. I do believe in my heart of hearts, God saved Donald Trump for a reason. If I gave you a reason why, that means I know the mind of God, and I don't. My guess, because God did give me reason and intelligence, Trump seems to me to be more of a placeholder, even though, as you did just say, he's being really shaky. But I would bring up, and this is where I'll push back a little bit, but Joe, you mentioned many times on this show, El Salvador, okay? They got fed up at one point.
I don't think has to happen, brother. Now we're talking.
No. But that's what I'm saying to you, and it is a legit question. I agree with you. Listen, Nick Fuentes is the first one to say, our enemies, okay? Those who would steal our money out of our working class pockets, okay? They do have a lot of power. That's just that. Well, they have a lot of power. That's not a light statement. They have a lot of power. We know that. Their systems they have set up are so interwoven and so complex, so hard to break, okay? My larger point in bringing up El Salvador, because you brought it up a million times, I don't think we have to get to that level of pain that El Salvador did. I think we're seeing it now. I do. And I think a popular or authentic popular uprising and a person of will, including members of the House and Senate who have a will to make this happen, can make it happen. What they're going to have to tell the American people is, I'll give you an example. Stock market's going to go down about 30%. Dow's going down to about 30,000. NASDAQ's going back to about 14,000. Don't worry about it, because they're in business. They'll regroup. They'll pivot. They'll readjust. Their shares will come back. But then again, I don't think a working class guy, as you mentioned earlier, is going to worry that the Dow went down to 30,000.
Well, 50% of America wouldn't, because they don't own a share.
They don't own a share. So who's going to get bothered by that? Larry Fink? Okay. Who's the other guy?
Let me just interject this. The problem is Larry Fink controls the advertising and the news. And that is where people get sucked into the propaganda. A populist uprising would bring about the change that America needs, whereby it becomes a country of the people, by the people, and for the people, because right now it is not. If you think that, you're delusional. You are simply paying attention to the propaganda and you drank the Kool-Aid. It is not. Donald Trump proved it's not by look at the bill. Look at the bill. That bill could have been Obama's bill. It's the same budget. By the way, it would have been George Bush's bill. It's the same budget. It's the same foreign policy. It's the same military-industrial complex, no matter who the president is. Right. If you want to change the country, that has to change. And to Joe Pasillo's point, what happened in El Salvador, he got, I think, 85% of the population. The reason why he got it is because it was the murder capital of the world. El Salvador was the most dangerous place to live in the world. So they voted for a man to change that, and he did. He arrested 70,000 people in the first 6 months.
Right.
But the problem with that is then you can get a political strongman, and you will get the Mussolini. or you will get the person on the left like the Hitler. That's the direction America is going right now. It's flipping chairs, chair to chair to chair. When the music stops, because the oligarchs control the game, and if they can't control the people, you're going to get a tyrant. And that's what's happening in Europe right now. That's what's happening in Canada as we speak.
Well, let me ask you a question. Are any of these European leaders who pay no attention whatsoever to the will of their own people, the voices of their own people, they put them in jail in England, in merry old England, that Joseph Pierce has come on the show and told us, and we went over his book, okay, A History of True England, talking about the Catholic patrimony of England from the end of the Roman Empire up until the Protestant Revolution, okay? Merry old England, you get arrested because you're praying in your mind, not even vocally, in front of an abortion clinic.
Putting something on Twitter. Putting something on Twitter, you get arrested. In England, right now.
Any criticism of Muslims, okay, you get arrested in England. France is no better. Germany's no better. So I know this is going to be controversial. I don't care. If I'm an Italian, even if I'm an American and I see that coming down the road, why wouldn't I want Mussolini? At least if I'm an Italian, Mussolini cares about me.
Well, the problem is then that's short-lived. What we have, that's short-lived. I know what you're saying, because the left could say the same thing. Like we have to get back to basics. I don't want that. I'm
not saying I want it.
What Fuentes is getting at is the system doesn't work anymore. And I agree with that. And I thought Donald Trump was going to take it further. And that's when I mean further, return the country back to the people.
Yeah.
That's all I want.
Joe, didn't he run on that?
Yes, he did. And that's his problem right now. The veil is opening. And people are starting to see, who are paying attention, that he's not delivering on that. I saw that with Doge. That was the first indication. I saw that with the big, beautiful bill, and I also saw that when he bombed Iran. But you could even go back further. You could look at some of the donors that he had, even before he was the president. Look at who gave him money. Remember the old adage, follow the money. That says that he's not a person, a true person of the people. In fairness to him, that's how the game is played. How else can you do it? Right. And that's what Fuentes is talking about. The game has to change.
Yeah.
The flag that I fly in front of my house is the flag of 1776. That's my American flag.
Right.
I'm reading right now a book of great speeches by the founders of America. When you read that book and you start to read speeches by Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Frederick Douglass, you see very quickly how far we have drifted from what the country was founded upon. This is not the country of 1776, not even close.
Right.
And that is what we have to return to. And that is what Fuentes, and again, there are aspects of his messaging that I don't agree with, respectfully. I think he's very gifted. But the parts that I absolutely agree with is what he just articulated. I am not interested in George Bush light or Joe Biden light or Donald Trump light. I'm interested in an individual that is going to return the country to the people. And I'm going to tell you this, when that individual comes up, they're going to fight like hell.
And I'll fight.
I'm just saying, because you saw what they did to Trump. They will fight like hell, because powerful people don't give power back. That's another thing that people don't understand, how power is wielded. Right. People who take power don't just give it back. They're not interested in what's fair or just.
No, they're not. What's interesting along the lines of what you're saying is that the Catholic Church teaches that not only is a revolution acceptable, okay, an overthrow of the government acceptable,
it is morally. They're going to come in the middle of the night.
I know. I can hear, if Merrick Garland was still in charge, you and I be in the guillotine already. But not only is a revolution acceptable morally, it's required morally when you are being oppressed. Now,
but Joe, let me stop you there. You're right. People are brainwashed. They actually don't think they are. Based upon the 30-year mortgage you took, you're being oppressed. There's so many aspects of what has taken place that they are robbing you blind, and we just accept it because we eat up the propaganda.
Joe, I agree with you on that, but I look at it this way. I have made the argument that in its 70 years of existence, in the meat of its 70 years of existence, the Soviet Union was arguably the most powerful regime to ever have existed at any point in history. Okay, for its 70 years. Rome obviously lasted 1,000 years. The British Empire lasted for centuries. The Spanish Empire lasted for 200 years. The American Empire has been going on now for over 200 years. That's what E. Michael Jones calls it. We're in the American Empire. However, the Soviet Union for its 70 years had a lot of power. And you could say that at their heyday, they had more power than Nero did. They had more power than Caligula or Diocletian or even Augustus Caesar, okay? If you want to think about it along those lines. Here's my point. When I mention revolution and the moral obligation to foment a revolution, Lech Walesa did that in Poland. We have an historical example of a citizen of an oppressed people, an electrician, and a pope who was outspoken against communism, okay, and without firing a bullet, began the death knell, the death spiral of the Soviet Union. My larger point is that when I mention revolution, I don't want you or anybody else out there to take me the wrong way. It doesn't have to require guns and bullets. What it requires, pardon my language, Joe, what it requires is balls. You have to know the truth and be willing to put them on the table and say, I'm willing to fight and die for the truth, for our children, for their children, all right? For posterity, to say, I know what the truth is. I know that what I'm looking at out there is nothing but a bunch of lies and oppression, okay? And oppression. I'm not downplaying, that's a big part of it. But if you have the stones and you have the will and you have the voice to do it, then guess what? You don't have to fire a shot. That's my
agree. And history has proven that we're not there yet. And sadly, because too many people just take their little crumb and they cower in the corner, we have to get eyes to open. Frankly, people, and what that usually requires is pain. I mean, if you look at what Poland went through for decades, 1 in 4 people died between the Germans and the Russians.
The Germans and
between what got them to that point. Look at what El Salvador had to go through. People have to go through, and that's what I think is going to happen in America. I think we're going to have, many economists are predicting it, that this will be the first generation that don't have what their parents have.
Shame.
It is a shame. And we did it to ourselves, and we voted for the people who basically did this, both Republicans and Democrats. We empowered them. We were complacent, and this is what you get. Eventually, we'll get to that point. People have to educate themselves. People cannot be satisfied with the status quo. But we are, and we're not there yet. Sadly, but what Fuentes is talking about is exactly what I'm looking for. That's what I wanted Trump to be, and he has proven that he is not that guy. I hate to tell all you Trump supporters, die hard out there, he's not going to be that guy.
He's not.
Would I vote for him again? Yes. He was the lesser of two evils. That's where I kind of, on Fuentes' deal, I don't know, because I don't want to intentionally burn the country down. Because Kamala Harris would have done so much damage to America. Look at Canada, if you don't believe me. What Trudeau did in 9 years, and now Carney in 10. Destroyed it. Went from the third largest GDP to the 28th. He destroyed it.
By design.
Exactly.
By design.
So here's the deal. Trump isn't the guy, but I'm looking for that guy. And I'm not looking for Trump light or DeSantis light or J.D. Vance light, the status quo. The pay-to-play politics in America has to
come to an end. It's got to come to an end. It's as we say on the show all the time. We have to take a lesson from C.S. Lewis. When you're on the wrong path and you're walking down the wrong path, there is only one solution. No matter how painful it is, you must stop, turn around, go back to the place you started. The place you started was good. But you went down the wrong path. You don't continue going down the wrong path or trying to find U-turns or no, a U-turn goes like this. We don't want that. That's slow. Stop, turn around, go back. That's what you have to do. And as we had Tim Gordon on the show, who wrote the book Catholic Republic, we had Taylor Marshall on the show to talk about a Catholic America. Okay. It is very possible. All the ideas in our Constitution are all ripped off from the Catholic Church. Subsidiarity. Joe, where do you think federalism comes from? States' rights. It's based on the principle of subsidiarity, individual rights, all the things that Americans take for granted. They all ripped it off from the Catholic Church. It's not so hard to go back to the beginning, but it will be identifiably, in my view, Catholic. And I think all people of goodwill would say, you want to know what? I might not be Catholic, but I kind of like their ideas. Let's spend a couple minutes on Tim Dillon.
Just described, the solution is going to be participation in the next phase. And if you resist, you'll be able to resist. They're not going to come and show up to your house and put guns in your face yet, but you're just not going to get any of the things. So all of the things and the goodies and the creature comforts that you may want are going to come with a price. And the price is going to be you're going to now get on the grid in a serious major way. And if you refuse that, you can go live in a failing town that's infrastructure is crumbling that we put no money into. But if you want to live in the city, the 15-minute city where you can walk and get stuff, and you want a little job and it's a part-time job, you got to do the things. You got to get the digital ID. You got to, you're going to have to, submit to all these background checks and mental health scans and everything like that to make sure.
Let's leave it there. Everybody out there at the front line with Joe and Joe could see the direction he's going. And I'll throw it out there to you, Joe, for a quick comment. Remember, everything we talked about tonight was having the will, the mindset, the right ideas, the will to get out there and to knock on doors, to start winning local elections. I mean, that's what they just did in New York City. Let's face it. They won essentially what is a local election. Even though New York City is the biggest city in the country, they won a local election. You could do all those things. But unless we take this power away from the government, they're going to do exactly what Tim Dillon says. Well, guess what? All right, we can't shut up those two Italian guys from New Jersey, but we could stop them from going to the ATM. We could stop them from going on. We could force them to not be able to afford living in Bergen County, New Jersey, or Maricopa County, Arizona. We could do a lot of things through digital ID and other things. You know what they'll do if we start doing that? They'll probably shut up, which is ultimately what they want us to do. So it accomplishes two goals, and I'll throw it over to you. One is they shut us up, and the other thing is they move us into a 15-minute city. So they could get control one way, and then they get control another. And my mother would say, and that's the world that we live in. Your thoughts?
What I would say is some people would listen to this and say, especially what Tim Dillon just said, and that is conspiracy. Bullshit. What I would say to you is this. Look to what's going on internationally right now. Look at what's going on in Europe. Look at the rhetoric that's coming from the pulpit from countries like Spain, countries like France, the UK, Ireland, Canada. That is exactly what is going on. Right. They're looking to control the population through a digital ID, which will lead to digital currency, to control you because they can't control you now because of social media. It's a response to social media. There have been benchmark issues that have taken place in recent years. The Arab Spring, Brexit, and Donald Trump. All those things should never have happened when the message was controlled, but they lost control of the message. The reaction to that is what Tim Dillon, in his ridiculous way, was basically communicating to you, a very serious message. If you think it's conspiracy, I invite you to look to Europe and Canada and Australia. It's happening. The beginning stages are already in place. We're one president away from it happening here. And then we're done. The party is over. 100, 200 years will go by before that then crumbles and something new begins.
Right.
That is the chapter I'm trying to avoid. That's why we're on the show, to raise awareness, to open eyes, to open minds, and hopefully open hearts. There it is. The choice is yours.
That's it. Well, you want to know what? And we'll end it with this. Did you ever see the movie 1984 with John Hurt?
I didn't
Richard
see the
Burton?
movie. I'm
The
aware
movie's
of the
great.
book.
You know, I read the book back in high school. All right. The movie's great. There's a great scene in the beginning where they're establishing Big Brother. You know what I mean? Like they're the director's laying the groundwork, really, you know, staying pretty true to the book. And all the people are listening to Big Brother and they're listening to the speeches. And afterwards, they all get up and they go like this, and they got their eyes closed, like they're in church, Joe. You know, like we do the sign of the cross. The only difference is a perverted sign of the cross. It's going like this and giving your allegiance to Big Brother. My larger point is every one of those people was a rat. Now, let's bring it down to street terms. There were rats because those who would resist, those same people who were going like this, they called Big Brother and they threw them under the bus. Winston was sold out by the girl that he was having sex with. Okay. She sold him out. She was an agent of the state because they wanted to go after him because you know why? Because he was a thought criminal. Okay. My larger point is our problem, you know, like a lot of times we know that the oligarchs, those who would seek to control, St. Paul called them the spiritual darkness in high places. Okay. You know, those who actually control things, that's our real enemy. But what our real enemy knows is they can control a whole lot of people. They can control a whole lot of people, usually through their belly, their pocket, through sexual desire, promoting pornography and gay marriage and abortion and contraception and booze and drugs and all these things that they do. Why do they do that? Peter Hitchens says it all the time. He uses the best word. He says, why should a government be lax in its marijuana laws where you just want to have a law that allows you to stupefy yourself? I'm using his words. He's exactly right. That's Christopher Hitchens' brother, Peter Hitchens, right? He says, why do you want to have laws that allow you to stupefy yourself? And that's exactly what we're talking about. There's too many people who are willing, Joe, to be stupefied. They don't care. Give me my sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I don't care. I don't care. I've heard people say this in my life. Yeah, if the government gave me universal basic income, as long as I can I could drink, I could smoke my pot, and I don't have to worry about bills. Yeah, I'll do that all day long. I don't have to own anything. They're totally down with that. I'll give you a final comment.
That's sick.
It's sick.
That's all. That's my comment. That's not the world I want to live in. That's not the place I want to raise my kids in. And the only reason why someone thinks like that, frankly, is they don't believe in an afterlife. It's all about pleasure right now, or they believe they could do anything they want and they go to God irregardless.
Right.
That, which is also another conversation we could speak for 3 hours on, but that's not where we're going. What I'm saying is that's a sad reality. That's sad. Who wants that? I don't want that. That's not what this country was founded upon. We got to get back to basics. Spirit of 1776, that is, not 1976.
No, that was the Jimmy Carter era.
Yeah, we don't want that. We want 1776. We want to bring in a new era. I'm all about America, by the way. The oligarchs aren't.
Right.
The oligarchs don't believe in America. They believe in enslaving you, and you're right now, and me too. I'm in the same boat. We're behind the 8 ball because our government doesn't represent us anymore. We need a change. We need someone to break the back of the oligarchs. Nick Fuentes nails that right on the money. That's what we need. That's what we thought Donald Trump was going to bring. He's not bringing it. Donald Trump is John the Baptist. We're looking for the man. When the man comes, eyeball him and get behind him.
Get behind him. All right, so thank you, everybody. We're going to leave you with a clip on the way out about the dangers of the UN. Gee, there's a shock. So thank you for joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe. Help us out as always. We ask you to like, subscribe, and share wherever you're watching this video. You can share from YouTube to X, to Facebook, or wherever else you might be. Of course, if you're on X or Facebook, please hit a like, hit a subscribe, hit a share, do all that fun stuff. Watch this scary video that we're about to show you from the head of the UN. And remember, we'll be on next Sunday live, and we have all of our Veritas Catholic Radio Network interviews that we post on all our social media. So if you like those, help us get out to a wider audience. We love you very much, and we'll see you next week. And remember, until then, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.
Spread of hatred and lies online is causing grave harm to our world. Misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech are fueling prejudice and violence, exacerbating divisions and conflicts, demonizing minorities, and compromising the integrity of elections. Threats to information integrity are not new, but they are proliferating and expanding with unprecedented speed on digital platforms and supercharged by AI technologies. Science, facts, human rights, public health, climate action are under attack. And when information integrity is targeted, so is democracy, which depends on a shared, fact-based perception of reality. False narratives, distortions, and lies breed cynicism, disbelief, and disengagement. They undermine social cohesion, putting the Sustainable Development Goals further out of reach. Opaque algorithms push people into information bubbles and reinforce prejudices, including racism, misogyny, and discrimination of all kinds. Women, refugees, migrants, and minorities are common targets. Lives are at stake when lies are spread about vaccines and other medical issues. The United Nations' own operations and missions are compromised as our staff deal with a tsunami of falsehoods and absurd conspiracy theories. We demand action. First, to the big tech companies, take responsibility. Acknowledge the damage your products are inflicting on people and communities, and you have the power to mitigate harm to people and societies around the world. You have the power to change business models that profit from disinformation and hate. The climate crisis is a cause of particular concern. Coordinated disinformation campaigns are seeking to undermine climate action.